We begin Global Watch with breaking news. Japan's government has approved a plan to release more than 1 million tons of treated wastewater into the ocean from the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant. The release, which is not likely to begin for at least 2 years, could take decades to complete. Still, it sparked concerns both in Japan and from other countries. So for more, let's get over live to our correspondent Phoebe Amoroso, who's standing by for us in Tokyo. So tell us more about this plan, Phoebe.
So currently there's more than 100 tons of groundwater leaking into beneath the reactors every day, and that's where the water mixes with radionuclides. And currently Tokyo Electric Power Company is filtering that using a system called ALPS, but that leaves behind tritium. Now, tritium is said to be one of the least harmful radioactive substances to human health, but it still needs to be disposed of carefully. And that's why the plan is to dilute this water down to 1/40th of national safety standards and release it slowly into the sea over a period of 3 decades or more. And to do that, they're going to need to build new facilities that will take about 2 years. Now, it's said that these storage tanks are running out of storage. They will be filling up around autumn 2022. And so that's why the government has decided to push forward with this release plan now.
And so, Phoebe, help us understand why this is stirring so much anger inside Japan.
So directly after the disaster, there was a huge amount of anti-nuclear sentiment, and this wasn't helped by the fact that TEPCO covered up the fact that there had been a meltdown for about 2 months after the earthquake and tsunami. And this means that the decision has not been met very favorably by local people, and it really added to a sense of mistrust and distrust. And Fukushima produce, its reputation was severely damaged. So many people associate Fukushima produce with as being dangerous and harmful to the health. And that has had a big impact on Fukushima's fishing industry. And so the fishing industry has voiced very strong opposition to this plan. Let's have a listen to some of their voices.
Not only fishermen from Fukushima, but also fishermen from all around Japan are opposed to the decision. Releasing the contaminated wastewater into the sea will lead to negative public perceptions of seafood from Fukushima again, so we are all opposed to it.
The Tokyo Electric Power Company did not handle the nuclear accident very well, and people do not trust them. So I don't think this release will go well.
The Japanese government wants to deal with this problem in a low-cost way, so in the end it's all about economic interests. But we, the people, don't want radioactive substances put in the sea. We don't want to suffer from pollution, so we have to raise our voices.
So some very strong opposition there, and there's a feeling of betrayal among those in the fishing industry that the government had promised that they would not push forward without their support. However, talks did not reach an agreement that both sides were happy with, and the government has promised to take steps to try and protect Fukushima's reputation further by disseminating safety information. But there still seems to be a challenge lying ahead, and the fishing industry is not happy with those measures.
So considering that anger then, Phoebe, what are the options for dealing with this wastewater, considering the tanks are running out of room?
So, good question. A government panel last year put forward 2 options. One was evaporating the water, and the second was this release plan. And it said both of them were realistic, but the release was the most technically feasible. However, some voices are saying, why not just build more tanks for now until further studies have been undertaken? And there is also some questions as to why there hasn't been more efforts taken to stop the water from leaking beneath the reactors in the first place. However, it's important to note that this is just one part of the decommissioning process. So the government is under a bit of pressure to act, because the next stage, and TEPCO as well, the next stage is to remove the radioactive debris from the reactors, and that is a much more difficult and dangerous task, and they're wanting to push forward to get to tackle that stage of the decommissioning.
All right, Phoebe Amoroso live for us there in Tokyo. Thank you. Well, China is also speaking out about today's decision by Japan. China's foreign ministry calling it extremely irresponsible, saying the release does not only affect Japan, but will seriously damage international public health and the interest of people in neighboring countries. Beijing is urging Tokyo to review the proposal and respond to the concerns. China says it will closely focus on this issue with the international community. The United Nations Nuclear Agency says it is aware of the concerns raised and will continue to monitor the developments. The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, told Chinese envoy Wang Chun the agency would advance its assessment and monitoring in an impartial and scientific manner. The IAEA had already endorsed Japan's planned release, calling it standard practice. Wang pointed out it was legitimate for China as a neighboring country to be involved in the agency's work. The IAEA said it will improve its communications with China. South Korean officials have expressed concerns over Japan's decision holding an emergency meeting. Our correspondent Jack Barton is in Seoul now, joining us live. So Jack, what's the reaction there?
Well, that's right. They held an emergency meeting after that announcement was made from Tokyo. It was a vice ministerial meeting involving ministries concerned about what's going on. So, of course, including nuclear energy ministries, fisheries, oceans, and the foreign ministry. Afterwards, the official presiding over that meeting expressed strong regret at Japan's decision. The official also said there hadn't been enough consultation from regional countries that would be affected by this release. And he also said that, Japan had taken this decision unilaterally and it needed to be one that more nations had an input in, and that Japan was endangering itself and its surrounding countries. South Korea is one of 15 countries that already bans the imports of some agricultural and fisheries goods from Japan. That could increase after this. And it's not just the government that's angry. South Korea's fishing industry is, of course, very angry, as is the majority of the general public. And we can listen now to a selection of some of those voices of the public here.
If Japan discharges the nuclear wastewater into the sea, the seafood will be affected. Japan's decision has a huge impact on us. Our business has already been hit hard because of the pandemic, and it's difficult enough to hold on to it, let alone suffer another blow.
If the water is released into the sea, not only Japanese seafood will be affected, but our country will also be affected. I strongly oppose this, and I think our government should protest against Japan's move.
As you mentioned before, it's probably going to be about 2 years before this water is actually released. It will need regulatory approval. South Korea says if it's going to happen, it wants much greater transparency than has already been shown, and Seoul wants direct access on site to that process to oversee what's happening and to ensure that it really is as safe as Japan says.
All right, Jack Barton live for us there in Seoul. Thank you. And the United States says it supports Japan's decision. The State Department issued a statement on Monday saying Japan appears to have made the choice in line with international nuclear safety standards. It also commended Tokyo's transparency. Japan's Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga is set to travel to Washington this week to meet with President Joe Biden. Well, with more on this, we're bringing in now Dr. Ju-Win Wu. He is joining us from Shanghai. He's an associate professor at the Shanghai Maritime University's College of Ocean Science and Engineering. Good to have you with us on the show, Dr. Ju. So we've been hearing some say this will impact the oceans, others say it won't. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this will definitely impact the ocean. Now, the tritium is one of the radioactive isotopes, and found at the highest level in the treated wastewater, and will be discharged, as it is nearly impossible to eliminate. This is because it tends to become a part of the water molecule itself. Other isotopes that tends to stay in the treated wastewater, like the strontium-90, cobalt-60, and the carbon-14. These isotopes decay very slowly and have much higher affinities with seafloor sediment and marine organisms such as fish, which means it could be very dangerous to human beings.
So help us understand that, because the isotope we're talking about here is tritium, which is the only one that would be left in this wastewater that Japan says, and that it's considered the least harmful to human health and will also be diluted. So why do you say that poses a risk?
Yeah, as we know, the marine ecosystem is the largest ecosystem on Earth. The isotopes will finally cause harms to human beings through the bioconcentration and the biomagnification of food chains.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Dr. Ju Win Wu from Shanghai Maritime University's College of Ocean Science and Engineering, thank you.